end of September. Most of you know me, but if you don't, my name is Brita TV. And the director today, we have a few board members with us tonight. Thank you very much. And a lot of members and a lot of author talk regulars who really love historical author talk. So if I can introduce the next.
All right. Ta-da! Thank you. All right. Okay, now you can buy my book. Well, first of all, I want to thank Bayside Historical Society for inviting me here. That was very generous of them. And actually, if I remember right, actually it was your idea. I was selling the book outside during our encampment, and she suggested, well, why don't we do an author's talk? And it was fantastic. So this is my first time, so please be gentle. I think the first question I'd like to ask is, have hands up who's actually seen us out there? Okay, so, I thought there'd be more, but okay.
I saw you.
Okay, you saw us, okay. Oh, by the way, we're being taped, so don't worry, you'll all be blurred out. Good, now how many people have read the book? No? Oh, really? Okay, all right, good. Went halfway first book or halfway? Okay. And you just had enough, right? You just stopped. Yeah. Yeah, yes. Anyway, has anybody been to a Civil War reenactment? Hands up. Yeah. Okay, a couple. Anybody visit Gettysburg? All right, okay. Well, anyway, I always like to see, how much of a background you got, so I'm not talking over anybody's head. But as Britta described it, this is a historical fiction novel. It's sci-fi. I prefer to use a comparison, even though I'm not fit to walk in Rod Serling's shoes. Sort of like a Twilight Zone episode, where very basic premise: you have 7 Civil War reenactors from today who go to a reenactment, a big Gettysburg reenactment, and this is where they get to know each other. Unfortunately, they run into the wrong gentleman, and they are sent back in time to 2 days before battle. And in order to get home, they actually have to fight the battle. So they always wanted to know what it was like to be a soldier. Well, now they're going to find out. But I thought I would just give an intro as to who I am. Now, my real name is Matthew Kenny. I go by the nickname of Max, and MX Kane, just to make it even more confusing, is simply a pen name that I'm using. And that's a picture of the book. It's really it's one book. It's just been split into 3 parts. Has anybody self-published before? No? Okay. Well, if you go through Amazon, which is very, very easy, they give you limits as to how big the books can be. So when I finally tried to publish it, I had to split into 3 parts, but it worked out brilliantly because it has 3 acts. And it's available on Amazon. I have this handy dandy clicker here. Let's see if it works. I'll have to see just how long I last in this outfit. But I thought if I'm going to be telling you about the Civil War, I thought it would at least make it look appealing. All right. Okay. All right. Well, Civil War reenactors, we like to call ourselves also living historians. It's a little bit more classy, since reenactors often get the reputation of just being a lot of drunken guys running around with guns. We're not always drunk. And there's no drinking at Civil War reenactments. And I am a member of Company K, 67th New York Infantry. Our second name is the 1st Long Island Volunteers. And we are based at a park called The Grange. It's about 12 acres. Has anybody ever been out to Sayville? You kind of familiar with it? All right. So it's on Montauk Highway, and the town of Islip runs it, and they generously allow us to use the park for our monthly meetings and drills. In fact, the picture on the left-hand side is a Dutch Reformed church that was saved and moved onto the premises. So that's where we have our meetings. And we also run some events for the town of Islip on the grounds. Now this clicker, I never really, see, look at that. Cool. Now, unfortunately, it does not work on screens, which is not very helpful. So I'm going to have to do it this way, or I could do it like this, but I might puncture the screen. But the picture on the right-hand side, whoops, okay, well done. All right, we got our first blooper. There you go. Okay, now the picture on the right-hand side, that's a group photo taken at the 155th anniversary of Gettysburg, which was in 2018. There was about, maybe about 8,000 reenactors for that one. Okay. Now our mission is education and preservation. We are incorporated as a nonprofit in New York State. We have a charter from the New York Board of Regents. And we are also a 501c3 under the feds, so we're a public charity. So we collect a lot of money, and we have donated over $25,000 to institutions like the American Battlefield Trust, and also to other historical sites. And we're dedicated to keeping alive the spirit of the regiment that we represent, ensuring that their sacrifices are not forgotten. Now, the top picture, that is our monument at Culp's Hill, which is part of the Gettysburg battlefield. And that picture was taken on Remembrance Day. Now, Remembrance Day is the anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. That's when he dedicated the National Cemetery, and that was only like about 4 months after the battle. So our unit fought at Gettysburg. We have a monument, and we visit there every year. Now, the only other monument that's actually dedicated to our unit happens to be in Bayside, Queens. It's in Captain Dermody Triangle, all right? Because Captain William Dermody, was an original captain in the 67th New York. He was killed at the Battle of Spotsylvania. So I guess for the last 5 or 6 years, we've been invited usually for Memorial or for Veterans Day to do a small ceremony, and to lay a wreath. And the other one, where we're just in our regular clothes, now those are flags of the original 67th New York. Plymouth Church in Brooklyn, has anybody been there? Okay, magnificent structure. That is where they were found. And I'm going to get into it in the next slide. Well, actually, bear with me, there's only 10 slides. So, okay, put you at ease. There's no death by PowerPoint here. All right. Well, see, these are some of the activities that reenactors engage in. Now, obviously, the reenactments, say the top one, again, that was 155th Gettysburg. We go on the road maybe 2 or 3 times a year to do one of these larger events. But most of our events are actually local. It's either going to be Queens, Nassau, Suffolk. Sometimes we go into Manhattan. Now, the second picture, that's me in my sergeant's outfit, and we're conducting drill at the Grange. We meet the last Sunday of every month. You have to remember, these weapons that we use are real. So when we go out on the field, we have to make sure that we know how to use them properly. And we do a lot of schools. That picture was Holy Angel Regional. That's in Patchogue. We did it indoors because the weather was terrible. Parades, we do a St. Patrick's Day parade out in West Hampton Beach. We've also done the one in the city a few times. And that picture, though, that was taken at the Remembrance Day parade. Now, on Remembrance Day, we all go down there, reenactors. It's sort of like Mardi Gras, where it just fills up with everybody in their uniforms, with their families. It's solemn. I mean, we have all these ceremonies all around the battlefield. And then there is the parade. But it's a celebration of the end of the season. There's actually a lot of dinners, period balls. I would recommend, most people go to Gettysburg in the summer, but if you have a chance to go on Remembrance Day, you might want to consider that. It's also a lot cooler. Yeah. And of course, you recognize the castle, right? Okay, we've been coming here since 2019, and that would be classified as a living history event, which is really an educational program for the general public, where we cater to all ages, and we don't necessarily, it's usually just us. We don't have a battle, but we usually do have firing demonstrations. Okay, and then we also do a lot of unusual special events. Many of them revolve around going to cemeteries and having firing details for dedications for headstones. And the original New York, 67th New York, was founded, or actually proper name would be financed, Henry Ward Beecher. I think most people probably know who that is. He's the Billy Graham of the 19th century. He's an ardent abolitionist based in Plymouth Church. He and his congregation financed 3 separate Civil War regiments, including us. And in fact, the 67th has another nickname, Beecher's Pets. And that's a picture of the church back in the 19th century. It's still there. And the picture on the bottom is one of the only ones we have of the original 67th when they were in training, before they even went into battle. And that was at a place called Camp Proctor, which is in DC. Okay, the muster of a volunteer regiment was 3 years. 67th served from June 1861 to 1864, fought in most of the famous battles. You know, the Peninsula Campaign in Virginia, which would include Fair Oaks, Williamsburg, and then also Gettysburg, Chancellorsville, the Wilderness, and Spotsylvania. And then in June of 1864, when their muster was over, there was still a year of fighting left. 2/3 signed up to see the whole war through, and they joined the 65th New York. As far as casualties are concerned, about 1,500 men and boys served over that period of time. And a good third of them were either killed, wounded, or missing. And when I say boys, I mean that literally, because the Civil War's last war, where minors were actually in the ranks, not necessarily in the front ranks, but you had 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds in the musician corps. And even though they were held back, I mean, there's still a chance that they're going to get killed. Okay, the last meeting of the original 67th was in 1911, and I already told you about the 2 monuments to the regiment. Now, up at this point, does anybody have any questions about our unit or reenactors? Yes.
You said before that when you went to a larger group reenactment, there were, did you say 7,000?
Right, and that was actually a small one.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any statistics on the breakdown between North and South, Union?
Well, there's always going to be a little bit more Union. Okay. Well, that's what it was. That's what it was like back then too. But yeah, it's more Union than it is Confederate. Okay, well, at least the big ones that I've done have been Gettysburg, Antietam. That one was actually a little bit more even between Rebel and Yankee. But the largest one I ever participated in was in 145th in 2008. That was probably about 15,000. But the largest one was in 1998 in the 135th, and that was over 30,000. And the reason why it was so big at that time is, well, pop culture. You had 1989, you had Glory. 1990, you had Ken Burns' Civil War. In 1993, you had the movie Gettysburg. So all that was, I hate to say it, but usually, just like Titanic, when you just couldn't run away from the ship, it said it's if you have a couple of popular movies or TV shows, it's going to ramp up interest.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Do you think the movies are factual?
Oh, there is endless debate over that. Absolutely.
I haven't seen any. I was just wondering.
Well, I think to be fair, for the Ken Burns documentary, that's clearly, the more academic one. That's a documentary. Now, the other two, let's face it, it's Hollywood. They're there to put butts in the seats. Glory was very good. The only problem I had with Glory was, unfortunately, what they did was they ditched all of the original soldiers that actually existed. The only one was Shaw, whereas that's a whole other topic. But it's a solid film. Gettysburg, we have a lot of fun with because it is pretty accurate. It's just as reenactors, let's just say we could be pretty bitchy when it comes to the uniforms and the appearances of the men. Oh, no, I wasn't in the hobby then. Yeah. But I do know a lot of people who were. Yeah. Yes.
Can you repeat the names of the movies again?
Glory. That's the one with Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman. Ken Burns' Civil War. Now that was the miniseries. And then the movie Gettysburg. And that has Sam Elliott, Stephen Lang, Tom Berenger with a really terrible beard. Martin Sheen is in it. Okay, yeah. He plays General Lee.
North and South. The miniseries was like.
Yeah, that's from the 80s. Yeah, that's from the, I remember that. That's from the 80s. I think that's Patrick Swayze.
And young Patrick Swayze, James Reed, and every Hollywood star there ever was came to play.
Stacy Keach.
Lincoln.
Yeah.
Or this, they played something.
Yeah.
Getting makeup.
Mhm.
But they tried.
Yeah, that was a little more LA.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, okay. Well, I have a feeling that most of you probably know the basics on the American Civil War. Whenever I go to a school, I try to explain for the kids the scale. But then, it was 750,000 soldiers over a 4-year period. It was raised recently. It used to be 620, but I guess now they could do more research and get more accurate records. So you're talking about 750,000 people killed, and I always tell the kids, that's just the soldiers. We're not talking about civilians who died either directly or indirectly from the war. Now, obviously, that would be mostly in the South, and the population of the United States was only a tenth. And that's when I forced them to do a little math. So I asked them, so if it happened today, how many would you have to kill? So what would you do? You move the decimal point. So you're talking about 7.5 million. So that means in order for us today to experience the American Civil War, you would really have to nuke the city and kill everybody in it. So that tells you this, no one's life was untouched by the American Civil War. And now as for the Battle of Gettysburg, that was the largest battle not just in America, but the entire Western Hemisphere. Over 160,000 men engaged, 46,000 casualties, nearly 8,000 killed. You had 27,000 wounded and 11,000 missing or captured. There's a really good book, The Vast Sea of Misery, by Gregory Coco, and it's all about the aftermath of battle and all the hospitals that had to be set up and the cleanup, because it was just really literally, it was just carnage. It wasn't just men, and this is horrible, animals. You had thousands of dead horses, and everything had to be burned. It was horrific. All right, okay, now we get to the book itself. And well, the first book is called Basic Training, and that is about these 7 American reenactors, and they represent all walks of life in America. They all come from different classes, different occupations. Now, Ken, I can't use my little marker, so I thought I would just bring out my poster. Here you go. All right. Okay. Can everybody see this? Okay. All right. Well, okay. Actually, the start is really this gentleman here. His name is Nick. Now, he's the New Yorker. And he's the exception in the group because he's not a reenactor. In fact, he is very skeptical of the hobby. He's a journalist, a starving journalist who lives in the city. But his best friend is this guy right here. His name is Zachary Taylor. They've been friends for 10 years. They're both just about turned 30. And Zachary he's been a reenactor from Georgia for ever since he was a kid. Grew up in the hobby. Very enthusiastic, very idealistic, and the two of them, they would meet up every year, visiting a lot of historical sites in the South, and so they were on a video call, and Zachary suckers Nick to say, "Why don't you join us for this big reenactment coming up?" And Nick says, "Okay, I'll join, but I want to be able to write something about it in the hopes of maybe having a story and selling it." And so through other associations with these people here, for example, this guy here, this sergeant, his name is Daniel Quinn, and he is a customs officer from Portland, Maine, although he used to be a cop in Boston. You have William. Okay, now William, he's black, and he's from Los Angeles. He's a diehard Californian. He's also an Army officer. Okay. And this is Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth, she's about 30, and she used to work under him in the Army. So she's a female reenactor, and we do have female reenactors. And this is Virgil right here. He's a corporal. He's from Texas, that he's working class. And then over here you have Jesse. Jesse's from Virginia, and he is a surgeon. And he's, you could say he's sort of like the aristocrat. So the seven of them hang out with each other at this reenactment. And I really poured a lot of my own experiences into it to sort of tell the general public, well, what's it like? What motivates all these different people? I mean, they all come from different walks of life. So what is it that they have in common? What are they searching for? And in the process, you learn that each of these characters, really, they have their own little civil wars going on in their own lives that they're dealing with. And in a way, going out and performing as a soldier is a way of sort of dealing with that. Now, what happens, unfortunately for them, is towards the end of the book, after the reenactment is over, and there's this big celebratory ball, is they run into a gentleman named Silas Gray. Very dapper looking in an all black outfit, although his eyes look a little strange. So he invites them to his hotel room after and gives them absinthe. And he drugs them. So they all pass out. And when they wake up, they find themselves, at the start of the second book. And it's dawn, it's June 29th, 1863. And they've been split up. You have Zachary and Virgil, the Georgian and the Texan. They wake up in an open field, but they find that they have whole new uniforms. They have accoutrements, and also they're given a flag, this. And the story is the same for the other five, for Elizabeth, William, Nicholas, Daniel, and Jesse. Now Jesse, he's the Virginian. Why is he not over in the other camp? You'll have to find that out later on. But it's the same deal. They're given this flag, they're given a whole new outfit, and everything was emblazoned with the number 21. And the instructions that they are given, they're written in rhyme. And they're kind of cryptic, but what they figure out is they need to follow the instructions and fly this flag if ever they're going to get home. And so at first they realized, well, what is this, some sort of sick gag? You know, they're dropping off in the middle of this in the countryside. But as they follow the map to the rendezvous point where they're supposed to go, they run smack dab into two real Civil War regiments. A New York one called the Gotham Rifles, and a Georgian one called the Chattahoochee Hornets. And immediately, they are paralyzed with fear. They can't freaking believe it. That holy shit. This is it. This is the real thing. And that's where, in this book, these 2 days, June 29th and June 30th, they know what's coming. And they're absolutely terrified. And they realize that they have to adapt to this. This is where they have to learn how to really be a soldier. Plus, this was the harder part of the book because I had to introduce all these new characters, all the inhabitants of these two regiments. So at the end of this book, it then goes into the last one. Now, this is called Seeing the Elephant. Does anybody know what that term means? No? Okay. That was a term used during the Civil War. It means if you've seen the elephant, you've been in battle. So seeing the elephant means that they're actually they're going to drive right into the Battle of Gettysburg. And this is the after photo. Okay. Now, rather than them all looking nice and clean at the high water mark with the monuments in the background, all the monuments are gone. You see all of the smoke and fires in the background. They don't look too happy, do they? And that's where you see them. You have Nick and Zach. They're carrying the guidon flags of the 21st. Now, Daniel and William are allowed to fight in the ranks of the Federal Army. Not Elizabeth. That's a no-go. They might have a black guy in it, but they're not going to put a woman in the ranks. So where did they put her? You see from the apron? Nurse. They make her a nurse, which is probably like the worst nightmare she could ever have. Jesse is a surgeon, so he goes into it, but he has his own issues. And then you have Virgil and Zachary, and they're in the southern side. And you'll have to, by the end of it, I guess you get to see what happens to the fates of the various members of the Fighting 21st. I would like to give a quick plug to a very good friend of mine named Kevin O'Malley, who actually did the watercolors for this. One thing I learned when I was self-publishing is just how freaking expensive it is to get people to draw stuff. Yeah. I'm not joking. And the flag, as you notice, changes. Now, there's a moment in the book, and actually there's a line in the instructions that said, "Only with sacrifice on the weave will your way be shown." So all of a sudden you see the flag change. Now, anybody want to take a guess as to why it was designed like this? Should look familiar.
Circuit board?
Mm-hmm. Because what could be a better representative of our age but a computer chip? Because our entire lives are pretty much run by these. All right. Now now the next, okay. Now that's the flag. I got through this a little bit quicker than I thought, but I am completely open to any questions. I do put a price list up. Wouldn't be an author's talk without a shameless plug. So all the books I have here, Amazon lets you purchase at cost, so I can sell them at a good discount. So $10 each or $30 per set, and I will sign them. So that this way, when I'm rich and famous, you just have something to pass on to your kids. On Amazon, it's still reasonable. You can get it on Kindle. I know a lot of people prefer to do Kindle these days. So if you get a full set on Kindle, it's just under $15. Now the paperback and hardcover, because the last book is a little bit thick, it's a little bit more expensive. So $15.99 for the first 2 volumes in paperback, $19.99 for the third one, and then $19.99 hardcover for the first 2, and $21.99 for the hardcover for the third. Again, this was my first time I've done this, so I'll open it up, free-form discussion. I mean, it's a pretty intimate setting here. Any questions about the book? Yeah.
You said that they do reenactments.
Yes.
Now, are you a certain character in the reenactment?
Yeah. Well, when Civil War reenactors, when they join a unit, the unit actually exists.
Yeah.
So we adopt a soldier. And in fact, I can actually bring out, I was prepared, I brought out a couple of props that we usually bring to our living history demonstrations. And here we go. This is one of the more interesting ones. Okay. I can pass this around. But like I always say when we go to school programs, please don't put this in your mouth. We really have to say that. All right. But this is the dog tag for my soldier that I represent. His name is William Kent. And he was an Englishman, emigrated to the United States, and he joined Company K, 67th New York. But see, when the war began, well, obviously, listen, who's ever prepared for a war? And the U.S. military was 16,000 men, which is like less than the New York City Police Department. And the Army had to learn a lot. The military had to learn a lot. But one thing they didn't have is IDs. So the soldiers were terrified about being shot, being killed in battle, and then not having there was no identification. It wasn't like the police state we have now, where you have credit cards and, driver's license. There was none of that. So they improvised and they made little tags so that they could be identified. One other interesting and macabre fact is, if you were killed in battle, the military was not responsible to send the body back. Your family had to go get it. Yeah. So thankfully that changed.
In a cemetery, near a cemetery. Didn't they bury you in the nearest cemetery?
Well, after a large battle, well, they buried wherever they could find room. I mean, yeah, they did have a lot of mass burials. That's true. But it wasn't formal. I mean, it was all improvised. Okay, you had a bunch of bodies. Okay, let's bury them. But usually the bodies were buried in pretty shallow graves. And if you have a good rain, it would expose them. I mean, there was, for example, a really good example. Now, there was a battle called Chancellorsville in Virginia. Okay. Exactly a year later, there was another battle fought over the same ground called the Wilderness. And during the Wilderness, a lot of the bodies from the year before were coming up out of the ground. Mm-hmm. It was only, it takes time to, for example, the National Cemetery in Gettysburg. I mean, that took a long time, that took months in order to organize and finally transport all the bodies over to a proper cemetery. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, it's actually a question about reenacting. So it comes up a couple times in your book where you talk about kind of the demographic of the other reenactors.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you come up with, or what is being done to come up with younger reenactors who will pick up the hobby?
Oh, so what about younger members joining the hobby? Well, that is an eternal problem that we have, is having younger people join. Because as you said, it does skew a little older. The characters that I made, the youngest ones are Nick and Zachary, and they're 29, which is kind of old, for a soldier. Even Elizabeth is like in her early 30s, and the rest of them are like the 40s and 50s. And that's kind of being generous. Even in my unit, there's a lot of men in their 60s, and some in their 70s, and we even had members in their 80s. But getting younger people to join is a challenge. And well, listen, I'm sure a lot of you probably are members of other organizations, and I'm sure Britta trying to get anybody to volunteer or join anything is a challenge, because let's face it, you have a lot of headwinds with technology, and the story. I mean, thankfully we do get, every once in a while, we do get a younger member, but if they join as a teenager, by the time they turn 18, they're usually out. Or if you get one who's like in maybe the 20s or 30s, it's great, but life gets in the way. As soon as their wife has a kid, it's over. So you just gotta grab it when you can. Yes?
How do you, you reenact and you
Yes.
take the position that you're blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
How do you get the background information on this particular person, so you know his identity, where he came from, what,
Oh, okay, all right. So
even in your book, the research involved.
okay, as Lieutenant blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Yeah, William Kent. Yeah. Well, fortunately, there are a lot of resources.
Okay.
Now, when our organization was founded in 1997, so that was still in the time of paper, and envelopes and stamps. Now everything's online, everything's digitized. It's much, much easier. So when I joined the unit back in 2002, and I chose my soldier, you just write to the National Archives, and they will give you the muster rolls. The muster rolls would be like the attendance sheets for that soldier, but more important are the pension records, because that has a lot of depositions and affidavits from family and neighbors, and you can get more of an idea, like, well, what was their post-war life like? And other than that, it's kind of, you just have to really dive into the internet, and hopefully there will be something. We are fortunate because we have a website, which I'm plugging because I am the webmaster, is when other descendants of the original soldiers Google to find out about their ancestor, and they find 67, they contact us. And they say, hey, look, my ancestor fought in your ranks, and sometimes they have diaries, or they have artifacts. It's like, fantastic. I said, please, can we actually have a couple of journals online that you can read. You can just download it. Yeah. And so that's immensely helpful for, it's great to learn what happened after the war, but you really want to learn what they were doing, during the battles.
What happens if you die? If you have a character that dies?
Oh, you mean what, in the book?
No, when you do a reenactment, there must be people soldiers that get killed.
Well, okay. Well, as far as casualties in the ranks, like say if we do a battle, to be honest with you, it's funny. Reenactments are supposed to be scripted affairs where you're supposed to follow everything as everything moved. But the paradox is that or irony, is battles never go according to plan. So we do our best, and as far as taking hits, falling down in the battlefield, sometimes it's planned. Sometimes you'll draw lots. It's like, okay, you're going to go down. More often than not, it's more of a case of you want to fall down after you've had enough. Or, yeah, which does happen. It's happened to me. Or, you run out of ammunition. That's another one. It's like, well, I can't fire anything. I might as well go down. And you always want to make sure you fall down someplace shaded. And someplace where the cavalry has not been. Right. Yeah, that's... I guess you could say that's a topic that's quite debated in our hobby.
Do you ride horses? I'm sorry.
Oh, do I ride horses?
Does anybody in the reenactment ride horses?
Oh yeah, now we're infantry, so that's foot soldier.
Oh, okay.
Now there is a local cavalry unit, okay, and there is a lot of cavalry. Now, but that's a whole other level of commitment because then you have a horse, which I guess you might as well have a Mercedes, and you have to feed it and all that. And but when you see the cavalry, it's really impressive, and they're out there. And you go to a reenactment such as in mid-October, October 19th, we're going to be at the Battle of Cedar Creek. That's in the Shenandoah Valley, and there was major cavalry action, and you'll get like 50 horses, just going after each other with the sabers going. Yep. I'll rather watch that from a distance. Yeah. Yeah, Britta?
I have a great writing. So, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, first of all, how long did it take you to write this? What was the kind of feedback that you sought when you were doing this? Like, were you writing through, or were you just doing this solo? And then, I know this is a really question. And then also, when you decided to self-publish, what led you to do that? And can you just tell us a little bit? You said it was pretty easy.
Oh, sure.
Did you just decide to self-publish right away, or did you actually send out to different publishing houses? Or can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the idea for the book came actually right while I was at Gettysburg that first time. So it was 25 years ago. And it all just kind of spilled out. I just filled notebooks, and then I went digital. And I was very naive because I thought, I'll get this done in a couple of years. It took me over 20 years to finish this thing. Because one thing I learned immediately is I needed to learn a lot about Gettysburg, the American Civil War, 19th century America, and I needed to learn about Civil War reenactors. So I joined the 67th New York, and that turned into a whole other adventure, which I'll save for another talk. But yeah, I needed a lot of information, and it took time. So over that period, the world changed. In 2002, that was right after the dot-com bubble. I wasn't even online until 2001. So Amazon didn't even exist. I don't think so. And it was just books. They just sold books. So, as time went on, the publishing industry completely changed. So when I finished the book, that was 2023, I had already looked into options. Now that you could go to you could go to Penguin and all these others, but that's like trying to get into some exclusive club. But then I learned about self-publishing. It's like, do it yourself. And I said, yeah. I said, that sounds punk rock. I said, I want to do it myself and learn. And I talked to people who've done it. Again, that was a learning experience if you want to self-publish. Amazon, it is simple, but you have to get artwork done. That was a challenge. That took a while. And format it all properly. But what's great about it is you don't have to order inventory. In the olden days, you used to have to order like 500 ahead of time. But what if you had mistakes? Then you're kind of screwed. But what was genius about this is there's no inventory. They just print on demand. So there's no stacks of books listed. If you order a book, the order goes out to a factory in Connecticut, and they just print it out and they send it. So that's fantastic because there's no overhead. Plus, I can go in as many times as I want and change any mistakes. And even though I really, really went through everything with a fine-tooth comb, as soon as a couple of friends bought it, they just sent me lists, which I appreciate. They were all my beta testers, because who are also expensive besides artists? Proofreaders. And although some of them will say, "Oh, I could do it in a day." I said, "You're going to go through 1,200 pages in a day." They use AI now, and I said, "I'm not having AI touch that, because God knows what it'll do to it. It'll start to have some wacky nonsense in the middle of the story." Any other questions? Yes.
Now, getting back to the reenactment.
Yes.
It's a silly question. But so now you have your whole battlefield.
Yeah.
You have this side. How do you know how many dead to put in?
Yeah.
Oh, how many?
Like, you don't just fall down when you're tired, but so what if everybody else fell down?
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, you see, that's again, it's well, there are certain scenarios which are done, which, yeah, you do have instructions as to die. We would do a living history at Gettysburg Battlefield, which, one thing you have to understand about reenactments, they're never held on the National Park Service does not allow you to do any battles in the battle, for understandable reasons. They don't want you to tear it up, and they don't want to do damage to the monuments. So, for example, Gettysburg, the National Park Service will hire reenactors to come in, like from April to October. They'll have a federal unit by the Pennsylvania Monument, and then they'll have a Confederate unit on Seminary Ridge, and to set up camps. But it's all pretty strict, and there's not too many of us. And we'll go out and do programs with the Rangers, like reenact a certain, like the charge of the 1st Minnesota. Has anybody heard of that? Anyway, it was in the Battle of Gettysburg. The 1st Minnesota ran out to plug a hole in the line, and they took 80% casualties. So what they did was when we went out, before we went out, we were all drew lots, and whoever had like a black one got to live, and everybody else would die. So this way, when we did the charge, everybody who was supposed to die would fall down, and then those that would come back to show the audience, this is all that came back from that charge. Yeah. That was one thing I had to always keep in mind. I didn't want this to be an in-joke. I wanted it to be something that anybody who was in a bookstore, they see it, and I guess you could say term normie. Any normal person can just pick this up and read it, and it's not gonna, bedazzle you with all these terms, and I don't explain them, because I want everybody to appreciate it. I'm sorry, you had a question?
I was just wondering, I've never heard of reenactors of Napoleonic Wars or French and Indian War.
Mhm.
What is it you think about the Civil War?
Mhm.
Grew up this whole hobby and industry around reenacting.
I think it happened it happened entirely in the United States. Number one, you could say it's fairly recent in terms of memory. I mean, it's not living memory anymore. And the scale. I mean, this was the granddaddy of all wars in the United States. And that's not to throw any shade, say, at Revolutionary War reenactors, because there are plenty of those. And believe it or not, there are French and Indian. I mean, there are reenactors for every single era. I mean, they had, in 2015, well, that was 10 years ago, they had a reenactment of Waterloo. And you can pull it up on YouTube. It was magnificent. It was they did the squares and everything. They had the outfits. Yep. So yeah, there's a lot of history nerds out there.
So thank you very much next, and,
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.